Inglés. Bienvenido de regreso, mi gente linda. Este es Elio Pierre aquí en tu Fiesta Radio, celebrando nuestra música. Estamos sumamente emocionados y vamos una vez más con nuestra última entrevista a pasar a inglés. We're back to English once again. And you know, it is a tremendous honor. It is a privilege. I will feel humble. Once again, I gotta say, it is incredible. And we're going to introduce our last interview, our last guest for the morning show today, as he deserves. Let's think that we're at the Olympic Games or something like that, and we're actually giving away a huge prize. Because the prize for the community will be to vote for the right person. Mm-hmm. And the prize for us this morning is to have with us Daniel Fisher. Just to give you an example, because his career in leadership and so many things is just unbelievable. 24 years of personal and program management experience in government and private sectors. 20 plus years of boys high school varsity efficiency. 9.5 years of intelligence analysis and supervisory leadership experience in support of Air Force, Cybercom, and National Security Agency, known as NSA operations. Extensive experience in team building, facilitating, process mapping, and project management. And oh my goodness, it's endless. It's endless.
Yes.
Just the highlights, it is endless. Let's welcome to the morning show and to Fiesta Radio, Daniel Fisher.
Hey, hello, thank you.
Yes. We are so excited to have you in honor once again. Thank you for being here.
It is an honor to be here and to be able to speak to your community. Thank you for taking some time to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Daniel Fisher, it is running for the Alachua County School Board. Mm-hmm. It is one of the candidates for District Number 1, as you can see on this beautiful t-shirt that I have, and I love it so much. And so let's begin with the why, the reason, the purpose. Why are you running for Alachua County School Board candidate?
Well, that's a great question, Elo. The main reason is I have such a passion for education, and having spent as long as I did in the military, 28 years, it kind of prevented me from being involved in any type of elected office because you're just not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. And so once I retired, I moved back to Florida, and I wanted to get back to my community. And education to me is a logical place to go because I have such a passion for it. I've been involved in it since 1991. In personal development in college, and then teaching and writing seminars and volunteering to the community. So I think I have a lot to give as far as my love for education and how I see it as so important to families. You know, education truly is the great equalizer. If you want to change your life, it really gets back to education, whether that's personal or formal.
That is awesome. And before we get into the questions, because we announced that, you and actually our friend Ray Holt as well were coming. Our audience, they started sending us a lot of questions. We have a list of questions that we want to go over there. But before that, I want to tap into and follow up with this question. Do you think that all this time you serving at the Air Force, and by the way, thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because of people like you, we can enjoy freedom, today. So we feel humble for that. Daniel, do you think that your career in the military has impacted you as a leader, and you can apply some of the discipline and knowledge that you took from the military in now your mission as a school board member?
Well, that's a great question, Elo, and I would tell you the biggest probably 2 or 3 things you learn from the military. Number one is you have to work as a team to accomplish missions, right? You don't get the luxury of letting personal feelings, likes or dislikes for somebody get in the way of accomplishing what has to be done, because in the military, the missions really can be life and death for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so leaders grow up in that system, and you just learn, one, you don't make excuses, because leaders are not paid to make excuses. Leaders are made to fix problems. Expected to fix problems. And 2, you realize that to fix problems, you have to bring a lot of people to the table, not all that you agree with, but it doesn't really matter because if they have something to add to the process, to add to making a better decision, we want them at the table because the ultimate goal is to make the best decisions so the mission goes forward. So take that analogy and put it into the school board. You know, it really doesn't matter whether or not you'd like to like everybody you work with, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, our goal has to be quantifiable academic progress by our children, especially by third grade. If we do not get them on grade level by third grade, we're shutting the door to dual enrollment, magnet programs, all the wonderful things Alachua County offers. That's all contingent upon being able to hit it by third grade. And so that's where I think a lot of my crossover experience helps.
That is wonderful. And talking about teaching our kids, this is taking me to my first question. It is actually questions, once again, from the community that they've been sending us since we've been promoting Daniel and Ray here, that they were coming. So this is the first question. Do you support a parent's right to know what their child is being taught in this classroom?
Well, that's probably the easiest of the questions you've given me, because the answer is yes, right? I think, again, to understand, to have a successful education system, you've got to understand roles and responsibilities, right? The education system's job is to educate kids and prepare them to graduate from high school ready to tackle whatever career they choose. It's to teach them to read in the elementary schools and all the other stuff. A parent's job is to raise their family and impart values on those children that they want to impart on the values. And I think when we get ourselves in trouble sometimes is when those lines merge and the school system starts to take on roles of what parents should be doing. And I really don't think that is a healthy alignment because, you know, what makes this country great is our cultural diversity. And every culture, every community has the things they value, and that should be respected. And it can be respected if the education system understands its role, which is to educate kids, not to try to impart values that a certain small group of people might want.
Yeah, and following up on that question, the first time we met, actually, you guys were having a speech, you guys were having an event, and I remember you expressing your, I would say your willingness to embrace the not only the community itself, but also the Latin community, the communities that we understand they've been a little bit without a voice, a platform. I will say you mentioned I really want to also serve, the Latin community, that all the small communities as well, so we can all embrace each other's cultures and be involved as one voice. Why is that? Do you see a need on that aspect?
Yeah, great question. So, you look at what has made America great over the last hundreds of years and 200 years plus, and we were the great melting pot, and that's what we celebrated for years, right? We brought in people from all over the world with their cultures, their work ethic, and a lot of the music we have that is unique to America is a blend of those cultures, right? And so why on earth are we moving to a direction where we're trying to split people again? And so it doesn't matter the community. All the community should be involved because it's their children, right? So the Latin community should be involved. The African-American community should be involved. The Asian community, because the education system is supposed to serve all those kids, not just a certain segment. And you can't destroy a certain segment to try to help other people because that's not fair to that community. And so I think all communities in Gainesville make Gainesville a better place if they have a voice. And we as leaders just have to work hard to make sure that voice is heard and they're represented in the policies that the board makes.
Yes. And talking about all these different communities and our variety in the culture. So what would you do to have all these people together and to help the education of their kids? Because sometimes parents, they don't speak the language and they choose to stay behind or don't get involved with the school or the school board.
Right. Well, that's a great question. I would tell you, number one, I think the county, the school district needs to expand its interpreter services. I teach at Williston Middle High School. Last year I taught English. This year I'm teaching history. And I remember going to a lot of parents' nights, and we were left up to the child to interpret for the teacher and the parent. And it's good that they do that, but that's really not the best situation, right? It would be nice if the district had resources so that those families could have interpreters there. So you're talking on an adult to an adult level and not having to have it filtered through students. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think we need to add more languages to some of the, like the text and the other things on bus updates. That should be done in multiple languages, especially for the families who the parents don't speak English well. And so I think those are some of the things we can do. We can also have better outreach to the Latin community. And that's why we're here with you, Elo, to try to get our message to the families so that they know they can contact us and we become their voice on the board.
Awesome. That is wonderful. One thing that we haven't talked this morning at all, talking about, facilitating, and making, I would say improving our school board and our system at the school better. It is the transportation. There is some counties, especially in Central Florida, they are having issues with, transportation, the school bus drivers that in need. Have you guys thought about implementing new policies or improving, bringing ways to solve this problem with the bus drivers?
All right. So to be fair, I'm not on the inside, so I don't have access to a lot of the specific data, but I can tell you some big picture ideas that I think would work and help immediately. Number one, I think not a mistake novice leaders and managers make is they blame external circumstances for a lot of their problems. Well, it's happening over in town B, so therefore that's justification for it to happen in town C. I disagree with that, right? At the end of the day, our job is to figure this out, and that's to rally whatever resources, whether it's the state, whether it's Fed, we've got to figure out a solution. The other thing you hear a lot is, well, they're underpaid, they're this. It's been my experience in life that pay is not the primary driver for most people. And surveys show that again and again. Yes, we should pay them good money, but I think what people really value is they like to have a place where they come and they can feel accepted. They feel valued. They feel like their job is important. And so our culture over the last 3 years has been really toxic in this district. And I think it's not only driven away bus drivers, but it's driven away school teachers, NESE and paras in the classroom. And so I would tell you first and foremost, and it's a little long-term fix, is changing the culture so that people feel like Alachua County is a place they want to work and they want to build their career. Number two, I think we have a lot of young bus drivers, and talking to some of them, they're at a real disadvantage because the district prints out a sheet of paper and hands it to them, and they have to read turn by turn why they have 20 or 30 or 40 kids in the back of the bus. Why don't we take, especially coming out of COVID, why don't we take some of that ESSER money and put some adults on the bus with them to help let the adults help, control the kids and do that so the bus drivers can focus on driving. That's a couple. Number three, I think, and it's a longer term fix, but part of the challenge that Alachua, at least the reputation Alachua has, is they have a lot of non-merit based hiring. So people get put in positions who aren't necessarily the best, but maybe they know people or friends. And I think part of what we have to do is take a look at district-wide and really try to go out and find the people that are highly qualified who can add value to each and every section. And I would just point to Ms. Kathy Black, who took over as the ESC interim director. She's making immediate changes that's helping the families of ESC, changing the culture. And so I think long-term, as we have to hire for these positions, we've got to make sure we go out and bring in the best and most talented.
Awesome. That is a wonderful, wonderful answer. And you briefly mentioned COVID. And COVID-19 is being before and after COVID. It's being a life-changing for the world in general. And someone from our community actually sent a pretty good, deep question about that. And this mom is actually asking something important. She said, did you support schools opening in person in fall 2020? Is there ever a circumstance in which you support schools not opening in person? If schools close for an emergency, how would you decide when to reopen them? And you need me to repeat that, let me know.
No, I got it. I think I have it. If I trail off, pull me back in. Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot to unpack in a very short answer. So for me to make an absolute statement, I would never do something that I'm not comfortable doing that because you don't know what the next threat is going to be. So if we can confine this to COVID without necessarily the next one, I think that will help me be able to give a more thorough and complete answer. So I think in March of 2020, everybody remembers nobody understood the virus, right? There was a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension. And so it's understandable that a lot of those early measures were taken because people just didn't understand. But pretty much by the fall, by the summer, we were starting to get it figured out. Mm-hmm. And yes, I am a proponent of opening up schools because we now, with all the studies from Stanford, I mean, just go down the list, the damage that has been done by those lockdowns.
Yeah.
And even though Alachua County opened up, you still had the mask issue. That became a very divisive point in this county, fighting the state over it, wasting a lot of time and energy, I felt, trying more to be right than actually what was best for the kids. So I think masking should be, in this case, for COVID, should have been optional for the families. I don't think it should have been mandatory. I'm not a fan of mandatory masks just in general. And I think with COVID, we should have, the big mistake that I think occurred was the county, the district had a really good plan going into the 2021 school year. They had the summer to work on a plan. They did, and they were implementing it, and it was a solid plan. But the mistake occurred, in my opinion, in December when they brought in a new superintendent who changed the entire focus of the district from trying to focus on education through COVID and started a reorganization of the county and the staff. And the reason why that was bad, it was her right to reorganize. I get it. But you're still in the middle of a pandemic. And to me, it would have seemed the priority would have been making sure that school system and the kids were getting what they needed to minimize what we now call the learning gap, which is the damage that's been done by shutting down the schools. So hopefully that kind of unpacks some of that. If you want to add something to that, I can be more than happy to address it.
No, sure. I mean, I think this question was great for this mom, this answer. And actually, we just got another question just right now. Thank you, Jackie, so much for tuning in, and thank you very much for sending us this question. If you have any question right now, we are live on Facebook, on YouTube. We are live all over the place, or on our radio station. You can send us this question via WhatsApp to the 833-752-1925. 833-752-1925. That's the number of the station, the phone line. But this is the question. If he has any plans to create a more customized school programs for kids with ADHD that aren't with the ESE. Also, if he approves kids with ADHD to be medicated.
All right, so let me take the last piece of that first, you guys.
Yeah.
Whether or not a child is medicated, again, I would say that's a decision for the family and the parents to make. That is not a decision for a school teacher to make, right? You're getting into medical decisions that historically from the beginning of our country has been between the doctor and the parent. And I think that's where that needs to stay. Mm-hmm. As far as the ESE question, that is a great question. And, Kathy Black has come out and officially endorsed me. She happens to be now the interim director of ESE. And so I was also teaching at Williston. I dealt with ESE students firsthand. And I can tell you that we need to fund the ESE program better. Kathy has taken it in the right direction. So the district should not be creating barriers for parents. The district should be removing those barriers so the kids can have the resources that they need. There are parents have told me that they've requested their kids are tested, and the district made an arbitrary choice. Well, no, we're not going to test them. Well, that's not really the district's job to decide whether or not they're tested. If the parent wants them tested, then the district owes the responsibility to the parent to test it. And so the ESE program, the funding's a little bit different on that, and I don't want to get down in the weeds in it. But in general, I think the ESE program is headed in the right direction. Alachua County really let it fall by the wayside. And so a lot of the problems she's talking about, I think, would be fixed as we fix the ESE program that already exists. Let's fix that program first, and then we can talk about if we need to add more services. But it's hard to do that until you have your process fixed like it's supposed to.
No, absolutely. And talking about being hard, one thing is hard. It is answering this question. No answering, but it's kind of like a very interesting question from this person. He said, like, how do you engage with parents who disagree with you? And if you can give examples of any story that someone that has, mentioned something to you as a candidate.
Yeah. So I think in general, to engage with people who disagree with you, I think it starts with finding, first of all, what you do agree on. And most people agree on 80 to 90% of every single issue. So there's lots of rooms to talk about what you do. Like, for example, in our district, most people agree that we've got to service all of our kids in the community, not just the well-off, but the underserved, the poor, whatever. So we're in agreement of that. We also are in agreement that our children need to read by third grade. Now, we might differ in how we do that, but the big picture piece of it, 90% of everything we agree on. So I think the big part of being able to work through these problems is you start with what you agree, and then you eventually move to get to what you really disagree with. And then there, you can just begin to talk. And another principle I think is important is for a leader, first to try to understand before you try to be understood, right? So my job as a leader is not to get you to understand my point of view. My job as a leader is to hear your point of view first. And all the great leaders that I worked with listened to far more than they talked, because they would take in as much information as they could before they would make a decision. And so on the campaign trail, we've disagreed. I've disagreed with some parents, but by starting with agreement and moving to what we disagree on, we left not on bad terms, but we just agreed to disagree, right? And so with parents in the school district, you've got a lot of different interests at play, and not everybody can have what they want. But I think for families to understand, the board is really trying to focus on the goal of increasing academic performance for all of our kids. So that's where I would tell you the biggest agreement can come in, is those decisions have to be made under that prism and not some of the prisms that the district has been using as a way of policy.
Okay.
Awesome. So to follow up that question with, you mentioned prison, and let's talk about security. Mm-hmm. We've been having I would say it's been tremendous with the security at schools. We just saw what happened, this horrible act of crime that just occurred in Texas. About it, just so sad for, so many kids. I think 21 victims, including 19 kids, 2 teachers. I think we are all aware of that, but it's been happening across the entire country. This is a beautiful country. We have beautiful children that we all want to protect. How are we going to do that? Do you have, as a leader, you already being at the Air Force, you have like a military mindset of discipline and preparation. Do you have any policies that you would like to implement, any security system so families, me as a dad, can feel better about the security of all our kids in our county?
Well, so let's unpack this in 3 different areas, right? We have the short term, the things we can do immediately to help. Then we have the midterm stuff that might take 2 or 3 years to implement. And then you have the long range policy to really get a hold of the root of this issue. And so before I get into the immediate, let me just tell you some of the drivers that I think is causing this. Number 1, bullying in school is still a problem, right? And you have these underserved students, or these students who just don't maybe fit into the right group. And instead of them being respected and loved, they get bullied. And then that causes a whole host of problems, especially when you understand the school system doesn't have unlimited resources, mental health and others, to deal with some of these issues. And so I would tell you, long-term, to fix this is a societal problem that we have to really wrestle with and get more mental health and try to do some stuff like that. So we can come back to that. In the short term, I think in Levy County, as an example, and some of the other school counties, they ensure, and the school resource officer walks around and makes sure every door is locked. We're required to have all of our classrooms locked. All of our classrooms have pull-down shades, and we do 10 drills a year of active shooter. All the outside gates getting in are locked, and everything is funneled through the front office, and there's even magnetic door locks so that people can't walk in. So there's a lot of security features like that that we need to make sure that Alachua County has. I haven't been to all the schools yet. I don't know, but I've talked to some of the SROs, and they've gotten pretty laxed on that. So that's one of the things we can do immediately. The midterm, I think we can do more projects and look at the flow of traffic and things like that for building security. I do think that schools in the military, we call them soft targets, which are easy to get into. And so when you see this hardening, for lack of a better word, of school facilities, what you're talking about is just trying to move it from a soft target to more of a medium to a hard target to get into. Because the harder it is, the safer the kids are going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that. The harder it is to get in. And here's the problem. What happened in, for example, in Texas, they also had a security officer over there. You know, and what also happened in Stoneman Douglas, many schools, they have a security officer. And we know that actually in Alachua County, we have a policy, we have a system that is really good, that they have a GPD officer. And most of the schools, not to say like all of them, but I think all of them have at least one officer. All of them have, right? Perfect. So even though they have a GPD officer, it is easy to get into the school. It is like the access, I mean. Yeah. So some people in our community, in our audience, they've been talking about metal detectors. As you know, what do you think about this? Because here's the thing: it is really hard to get in an airport with a firearm, right? How is it easier to get in inside a school? I think we have our treasures inside that school. You know the point here here.
So I came from California. I was stationed out there for a lot of years before I retired, and it is not uncommon to go into schools there that do have metal detectors. I would tell you from my vantage point, that's the last resort because it really does send a pretty bad message. You know, when you walk in and you see metal detectors going into a school, it just mentally, it sends a message that I don't think is a message we want to send per se. I think there's other things we could do without having to put a metal detector in. For example, if you look at the Texas problem, Florida passed a law after that major shooting, I think it was Parkland, one near Miami, but where there has to be a school resource officer in every school, right? Texas didn't have that. Part of the problem with that area was they had one officer for 3 or 4 schools. So the response time was a lot slower. And then you look into it, another problem they had is the teacher went out to the car and she propped the door open. So those doors are supposed to remain locked. And had that door remained locked, the shooter never would have got in the building. So the teacher, out of convenience, propped the door open. And then when she ran in, the door didn't close all the way. That's how he was able to. So there's a lot of things I think we can do, Elo, before we have to get to what I would consider as a draconian effort of starting to put metal detectors. And I just, that would be one of my last resorts, to be honest.
Very interesting. No, it's a good answer. And this is a point that it was brought to the table. I was saying a topic that we were discussing here, just in a morning show, randomly, talking about different things around the state of Florida. Someone mentioned that, and I was thinking about it, is it really the first thing we should think of something else? I agree with you that if we have a system that no matter what, that door is gonna lock by itself. You know that happens in most places these days. Correct. When you go out, and then once you leave, the door immediately remain open, and having signs, do not leave this door open. I agree with you 100% over there that it will have been a different story if that door would have, was closed.
There was about 3 or 4 things that occurred there that if any one of them would have been different, that situation would have played out completely differently. And here's my concern. Let me just go back and let me just clarify something. My concern is the rush is always to pass new programs and new systems. But that's not always the answer, because every program and every system is still dependent upon the people to execute the system or the program. So we've got to make sure that our teachers, and that teacher had no malicious intent. She just was running out to her car.
Yes.
And so even in the military, when you're deployed downrange, you always have to fight against getting comfortable, because when you get comfortable, that's when you start making the mistakes like propping the door open. And so I think we have to do a much better job. And again, I think Levy County does a really good job of it. I'm not as familiar with Alachua, but the training that we got as teachers to handle active lockdowns and the way all the buildings are secured, pretty impressive. And I think it'd be a lot different story there than what happened in Texas. Not perfect, Elo, not perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Another question, and we are getting close to the last minutes of the interview, but of the I would say debate with Daniel Fisher, our Alachua County School Board candidate for District Number 1. Are you aware that teachers are saying that disciplinary referrals are handled differently for children of different races? Do you support the goal of keeping the risk radio at 1.0?
So again, a lot to unpack, but this is what I'll tell you, Elo. I think the way Alachua County is doing it now, as the way a lot of our country is doing it, is the tail wagging the dog, because they're trying to get to a measurement that is a risk of 1.0. And so what they're doing is they're manipulating data or changing data or making policy decisions to get to that 1.0. I would tell you, as a skilled manager and leader, I think that's the opposite. If we want to get to 1.0, then you would analyze the data. And if there is a race or a group of kids or whatever that have a lot of referrals, right? Whatever happened to putting someone, so let's just hypothetically say I'm a teacher and I have the most referrals in the school. Well, why don't we put somebody in there to watch that teacher for a couple weeks and to see, is it the teacher or is it truly the student? And if it's truly the student or students, then why wouldn't we put them in intervention to try to change that, rather than not reporting, underreporting, just to get a number down to say, look what we did? You're still not addressing the root issue, which is the behavior causing the problem. And so I do think Alachua County is guilty of that. And I think we need to get away from trying to chase a number, and we need to set a goal, a measurable goal, but then we need a smart policy to approach it. So when we hit the 1.0, it's a legitimate number and not a fabricated number where the teachers are quitting because everybody knows that's not a true number.
Awesome.
I just want to go back to the, we talk about the security and also how students sometimes they have been bullied, but I want to know, how would you address this? Because sometimes the problem starts at home and the student brings that to the school, and then it's part of the school problem.
Yes, it is. And that is a really complicated issue, because now you're starting to teeter into what goes on in the family. And is it really the school's job to try to teach parenting? Are there other state agencies that could help with that? So I'm hesitant to continue to expand what the school can do, because the school is not magical. It's not unlimited. The school system's designed to educate kids, and that's what we have to do well. And then we have to pull other resources. So one of my platform areas, to answer your question, is to engage the community. And I think we have tremendous resources in this community that go untapped. I'll give you an example of one. There's an organization called Butterfly, Blossoms and Butterfly. And she started it as a nonprofit to minister to people that are going through chemotherapy for cancer. But she's skilled in her organization, skilled in intervention and helping through mental health. The community's full of people like that. So why can't we pull those people into the schools? Not everything has to be a government solution. There's a lot of nonprofits and people that are willing to give. And to get back to your bullying question, I think it ties into the discipline problem, because if you're chasing an arbitrary number, you might tend to look away at bullying. And I went to a school board meeting, and it was stunning to me. We have 30,000 kids. You want to take a guess, Elo, how many, they said, documented incidents of bullying occurred last school year out of 30,000 kids? 35.
Wow.
I don't believe that. You cannot tell me with 30,000 kids there were only 35 incidents of bullying, especially when the parents would tell me at the festivals it's going on all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think we really have to look into it. And then the principals have to be held accountable for that. They set the tone for their school, and they can do a lot to stop it moving. And there's a lot of tools at their hands, a lot of tools that the teachers have to intervene. It just has to be a conscious choice to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So, okay, we are actually getting ready to wrap it all here. It's been a tremendous pleasure, and And we're super excited. We want to remind you that you can vote on August 23rd. For those that are watching right now live on Facebook, on YouTube, we want to thank you for tuning in, for being part of this journey, supporting Daniel Fisher as one of our school board members. You can vote also beginning Saturday. You can
Early
also
voting.
vote. There is multiple places that they are available, and there is a website that you can go to find those places. But now, before we talk about how people can support you, a final message that you would like to share with the community.
Well, before we get into the message, Elo, remind everyone too that they can vote for all 4 seats. It's not just one. So they can vote for all 4 of the candidates, 8 of the candidates, 4 seats that are running. And that's important to them to know because they really have a big impact on how this board's going to be shaped.
Yes.
If they get involved. So my final message to the community is this: if you like the way our school systems are running, if you like how the 17% third grade level at Terwilliger, if you like 50% of our kids not being on grade level, if you like the current policies, then there would be no reason to vote for me. But if you don't, and you want somebody to go in there that has some management and leadership skill to bring some people together and maybe solve some of these problems that we've been told have existed for years, then I would invite your audience to please not only vote for me, but support me by getting my message out to the other family members in the community.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thanks, Elo.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to make a change, make a difference in our community. So go out and vote August 23rd, 2022.
And Elo, they can go to my website, votefisher.com, and they can see a lot more of the detailed plans and make any donations that they would like to our campaign.
Awesome. So yeah, they can donate. They can maybe volunteer at your events. They can do multiple things.
We need a lot of help to get this message out and win on August 23rd. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's give a round of applause for Daniel Fisher, our school board, Alachua County School Board candidate. Vote August 23rd. And early voting, also, if you don't got the ballot for the mail, no worries. Saturday, it is another round that you can actually go out and vote on August 23rd. Do not forget, vote for Daniel Fisher for District Number 1, Alachua County School Board member. Yes. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Elo.
Once again. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to see you guys actually tomorrow. Remember, yes, we're going to be at 7 until 11 p.m. Como todos los días, de lunes a viernes a partir de las 7 hasta las 11 de la mañana. And you know what? We're going to leave with a positive mode. There is a song that I love so much by Journey that I want to leave you guys with, and it's Do Not Stop Believing. Don't stop believing.
Yep.
Don't stop believing. And to do that, we need great leaders like Daniel.